I'm going to share a quick piece of good news with everybody. We got the templated agreement language from the attorney, Mr. Walker, and that is on Nido's site. So I'm going to just share with you where it lives so everybody knows. Okay.
And is this for the contracts of tuition?
Yes, ma'am. Exactly. So Rick came, he was the gentleman that gave us some admissions agreement advice. We hired him. If you go to the COVID-19 resource page, we hired him to create templated agreement information. And it's right here. So you'll see sample COVID-19 language. And it's pretty robust. Now, the huge disclaimer is that this does not take the place of legal advice, obviously. It's a template to share with your attorney so they know what to do, and he made sure to put that in, big bold letters. But this is what he talked to us about over the call. So hopefully that's helpful. And with that, Mr. Hillis, can I turn it over to you, sir? Oh, I think you're on mute.
There we go. I'll tell you, one silver lining from this is that I'm going to be a video conferencing pro by the end of this experience, as I'm sure many of you else will be. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining our weekly town hall. You can call that whatever we want to call it, but it's a time for us to be together and commiserate and plan, because school's going to start before we know it. And what are we going to do? And how are we going to make sure that we operate in the same way? So today we're talking about the processes for reopening schools. Our early childhood programs are reopening on May 26th. So I have been knee deep in all of that planning, and I'm learning some interesting things. Before we move into general discussion, just sharing a couple things that I've gleaned is having a frequently asked questions document, whether that's on your website or a Google Doc that you share, I think is essential. I was noticing initially that when we were communicating out to parents, I was getting 15 of the same questions over and over again. So creating an FAQ about our policies for tuition and how we're going to prioritize enrollment, et cetera, really helped with that. The second thing you should be aware of is that you're going to have lots of conversations with parents. This is not something that you're going to put out in an email. And I know I'm contradicting myself, because I just said use an FAQ. You're still going to have a lot of conversations with parents, and those are going to be long conversations. Our telephone conversations have been averaging maybe half an hour, because people are going to want to check in to see how you're doing just in general. So once you get through the niceties, then you're going to have a lot of specific questions to answer. And you really, the goal of this is to make people feel comfortable. There's no way to streamline that. There's no way to get around that. And it's really actually the most essential thing that you can do is make sure that people feel comfortable when you're returning. So just prepare for that. My voice has gotten hoarse over the last couple of weeks. You may be able to hear that because I've been on the phone quite a lot. So just make that mental note for yourself if you're returning soon or if you're returning later, that you're going to be spending lots of time on the phone. And then I took the strategy of giving people options of dates to return. People can return from May 26th up to July 13th. And then at July 13th, they would have to start paying tuition to keep their spot alive if that's what they choose to do. So giving parents as many options as possible to return, I think, is going to be key, because I've seen literally out of the 475 parents that we have, I would say 75% wanted to return on the day that we opened, and we're not going to start all the children back at the same time. We're going to phase them in just to make sure that we have our procedures in place and that we feel comfortable doing so. But it really did help having parents self-select the week that they'd like to return and if they were flexible or not. And we also had an option where people could note that they were essential workers, so we could help prioritize them. So just know that it's going to be a lot of work getting back. This is a confidence game. This is a confidence game for not only ourselves, it's a confidence game for your staff. It's a confidence game for your parents. I think my sense is that once we get past the first week or two in this, that it will become easier, because we are reconnecting with children that we know. The relationships are in place. And really what we're dealing with is just enhanced procedures in terms of how we're operating. So just remember that. And I'm reminding myself of that every day, that it's my job to project a sense of calm, a sense of confidence in what we're doing. And again, this may be different in your area. We have a very, very low incidence rate of this illness in Northern California. It's very, very, very low. It may be different for you if you're in an area that has a higher incidence. It may be different for you based on the demographics of your parents or all sorts of different factors. So just be aware of that going into it. And yeah, I'll be sharing my experiences with reopening. I think most of our staff and all of our parents are definitely excited to return. I know it's been, for me, disheartening every time I see a positive study that comes out on one day about, oh, children don't transmit this, and then the next day this whole thing drops about Kawasaki's disease and all these other things. So that's been very difficult for me because I can't get a firm read on the issue. And also the issues become so politicized now that regardless of what we say to some people, they're going to have one stance or the other. Either we never should have closed, or we all need to stay indoors until we have a vaccine. So just remind yourself that there is no way that you're going to get out of this without upsetting somebody. I've kind of resigned myself to that fact. And what I'm trying to be is as fair and as consistent as possible as we reopen and plan for this new era of Montessori schools in COVID-19. So anyway, with that, we're going to be talking about general procedures today for reopening. And Costin, did you have anything on the agenda in terms of that?
I have two things. The first is there's a shared document that we've provided to all of our members. I've linked to it in the chat. It's where we're housing anything that people want to share as far as what they're doing. Something you want to send me to add to the document, I absolutely will. The document has navigation on the left-hand side that makes it just a little bit easier to find your way around. So you'll notice the document, or the navigation on the left-hand side, just lists the school that it came from, along with some sub topics if they exist. If you have something to provide, please do. Send it to my email. I'll drop that in chat. In a perfect world, I'd love to have a combined FAQ. Matt mentioned how important an FAQ is going to be. Obviously, it's not going to be the same for every school, but if we have the ability to draw from each other, I think that mind trust is going to be really valuable to everybody. That's number one. Number two is Brent Bauerband on? Brent, are you here?
Yes.
Awesome. Brent wanted to present an idea he had that I think is really sharp. Matt, it's one I shared with you. Is now a good time for us to do that?
Absolutely. I reviewed what Brent sent over, and Crystal Lake's very lucky to have you work with them, Brent, because the level of specificity and detail that you included was beyond my pay scale. And I really learned a lot from reviewing it, and I'm anxious to see how you're going to be implementing that at Crystal Lake. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. What I tried to, as we started going into all this, you kind of hit a thing of it's if you're in an area that's, as Matt was describing, that's starting to open up, you feel good about being able to get going again. If you're other places, you may not be quite as open yet. We're outside Chicago, and so you're talking, a 5-phase program to go back in, and maybe our Henry County is getting close, but then. And then at the same time, the Chicago will have its highest day of deaths in, the whole time, right? Just spiking in and out, kind of like Matt was saying about, with kids and everything, new news. So what we try to put together, I come from a background of working with Roche and with Abbott Laboratories in infectious disease throughout my career. I'm retired. And so I worked around a lot of clean rooms and clean facilities. Worked on AIDS back in '85 and the first test, and SARS in 2002, and Mad Cow and a little bit later. So that's all old history, but it's things that I had run into. And I've seen clean rooms all over the world. I've seen clean rooms in Hungary, that you wouldn't think were clean rooms, but they functioned at the right level. And so the whole point was to if you think of, I don't know what slides we've got available there, Matt, but if you just pop up real quickly, the CDC one, is that there? Or is it just, the yellow one, the one with the yellow there? Yeah. And so what you can look at there is it just, this is the official thing that's there. Every state has different, interpretations. Every state medical, department has some different interpretations. This is the one, from what I can tell, it goes back to the highest level. CDC is in Centers for Disease Control, is in the Health and Human Services. They are the top group. And this is what they basically say. It's extremely stringent, and but it could theoretically, if something goes wrong, you know, this is what they'll come back to basically. So I was trying to take a look at what is it that everybody, you know, what's the highest level you would have to meet if you were to come up with something. And so then the next slide, then if you have that, the one that shows that one there. Okay. So this is, it's way too much here. I'm sorry for the too much on the slide, but basically what it's saying is, you know, we're coming along now. We've been sheltering in place, okay, May and June, or May, and now phase 2 from using the CDC type approach would be schools can reopen, okay, if they're in a particular place, and then you're going to get back to by, I think the real issue is to think about, and I'm hoping that it doesn't come to this, is that you know, as influenza will hit in you know, the end of fall, and it will be, you know, 30, 40, 50,000 people, you know, that will be you know, distressed through that. And then the real worry would be that we didn't have this last year, was that COVID-19 would hit on top of that. Okay? That's what you hear Dr. Fauci saying and others saying, you know, what is the potential there? If that happens, then you're back at, you basically have to, everything could be shut down again, right? It goes back to full shutdown, no matter how much we think we've prepared for. And at that point, we either all become brilliant at distance e-learning, you know, to somehow try to translate our Montessori principles across that, or what I'm talking about here today is could you become a safe, clean school that could operate during a pandemic? Okay, that would be the ultimate challenge. Okay, or as much as possible, because you think about it, they are having the daycare for essential workers right now is taking place. Okay, those people are having, you know, various size, you know, daycare centers all over that got the approval. We're doing that, and they don't have any particular, you know, I mean, they have procedures they follow, but they don't have any heightened, you know, ability to, you know, keep themselves protected or anything like that. So in one case, there is some precedent for the fact that you know, as this thing gets bigger, or whatever, that potentially, you know, we have to wrestle with the fact of how do we go forward. And so this is what I'm talking about is a way, could we potentially seize the initiative, so to speak, and you know, get ourselves to the point where maybe we could be within certain levels able to do, you know, functioning that we might not otherwise. So what that means is we go to the next one then, Matt. I'm sorry, not Matt. Cassim. Okay, so this one. So this is also way too much. Basically, what happens is you in a clean type facility, you have a perimeter, okay, a building. And you want to keep everything in the building clean, okay? Clean meaning that you're able to sanitize it, you're able to keep it at a, you know, high level of cleanliness, and so that, you know, within those walls you are, you know, you've maintained a certain level of safety and cleanliness. That it can be done by the fact that you have. You're showing the floor plan for Montessori. Oh, okay, all right. My wife's telling me to mention something here. This is the floor plan for Crystal Lake Montessori. Okay, so this is an example of, and part of the reason I'm even coming up with this is, as you know, you're looking at this thing every day and you're thinking what you run into. I was thinking about the way that we are set up, and this course may not be how everybody's set up at all. We're very fortunate that we have a pretty big amount of space. We have basically what I would say are 2 30-foot hallways that come off the back of the building, okay? And so we have a driveway that you know, that's the black part up in the left corner there, that people would come in and they pull up in their cars and they, you know, wait to be checked in, and the kids go into where the blue arrows go into what's called the dirty area here. And so what the idea would be you could set up, as I know, Matt, you were looking at temperature monitoring, and a lot of people are looking at that. You could either do temperature monitoring at the cars, or, you know, get a green or red reading, whatever it is. And then you would, they would basically be able, possibly you do oxygen testing, although that doesn't sound like that's going to be, you know, that helpful. So I don't know that would be. But then you move, so what you do is with the blue arrows, you come to the back door there, and then you go 2 different directions. You come to what's termed dirty, meaning it's outside, okay, outside, and then you come through a door, and then let's stay on the top of the picture here, the pass-through one, okay. So what would happen? That's right, thank you. And so what happens is you open the door and you come into a series of hooks, lockers if you have room, and you have all those down there, and you now take off your coat, you take off your outside shoes, anything else that maybe is, a sweater or something, and you leave it on your hook. You have a designated hook there, okay? These could be high, low, and however you get them all in there. And then at that point, you've removed your dirty outside things, okay? You go to a hand wash station that's in the middle there. And then in the middle of these clean rooms, there's a point I don't know if any of you have worked in clean rooms before, probably I'm sure there have with this many people, but there's a step over, a changeover. And basically what that does is in the middle of that room, it separates, the dirty from what will be clean. You step over and now you put on captive shoes, slip-on shoes. Maybe you put on a mask, maybe you put on an overgown, depending on what level you're faced with. And you then go through the door and where the green is there, and you now are in a clean part of the building. And this is the part that's tough to do, but it's radical, is that in theory, within there, you can have an entirely clean facility, okay? If in our case, that would be, classrooms, we have a gym, stage, and it would depend on the fact that was shared earlier on this, on these talks, was that if you went to something like the electrostatic sanitizing, okay, you could keep an entire area, clean every night, okay? And so basically you students come in, you have class and everything, and then you clean the facility overnight with the electrostatic mist and fogging, and then you're ready to go the next day. That plus, the hand washing and all brings you in. And the key here is really there's the one pass through that goes to the upper L into the middle school. The other 30-foot hallway comes up along the gym. That's pass through 2 on the side there. I don't know if you met, kind of some, that area in there. Same thing, but just, for some of the smaller kids, and you would come that way. So that's a fair amount of room. The alternative is you try to do that at every single one of your entryways. We've had it suggested that, we could do it at every single classroom through our outside entryways, but then you lose the whole point, which is the containment of it and keeping it clean. And so, what you're getting here is this does not go to full, biohazard, classrooms for level of cleanliness, but it takes you, in terms of intent, in terms of, you trying to do something, it takes us to a much cleaner type of thing. The next step would be actually is if you went all the way would be to, and I'm thinking we could do this for probably about 15,000, something like that, between, we're looking at a fogger that's going to be about $4,000. And then you've got, some of these other doorways and things. But that would basically put you in that, at this level. The next step is what really they do is that they have air handling, okay, where you go with HEPA filters and things like that, and you get the higher level of air changes up. They kind of sweep, anything out, and you go to humidity control, like up to 40% humidity, which keeps things from traveling very far. That's why they don't tend to travel as far in the more humid summertime. But that, I'm not sure what the cost is, but you could be, at that point, you're talking about some serious, if you do that, you create what's happens is that you create a positive pressure in that building, okay? So that everything, every room, gym, stage, classroom, whatever, is basically under positive pressure. And so it's pushing out of the building. Okay. Yeah. And yeah. Oh. Is what?
It's the very first part.
Okay. So yeah, so that's what would be is you basically are creating a clean area that, depending on how far you go with it, is would enable you to actually operate at different levels of threat level. And the question would be, would this allow parents to feel more confident and come in? We don't have this done yet. We're looking at this. We're moving toward it, but this is a concept really of we will want to get to kind of what's shown on the page here by the fall. That is our intent. Sorry for a complicated, long thing.
No problem.
How radical does that sound? Crazy?
I think for many of us, I'll just speak up quickly, and then I'd like to hear from the rest of the group. It's going to be a cost-benefit analysis for how much time and money do we want to spend on preparing for something versus moving to a distance learning platform if our parents will accept that. And will you be spending money for something that could be a temporary thing? So if you're going to spend $15,000 to $50,000 more, if you're talking about the HEPA air filters, is that something that's going to be a necessity in 2 years? Maybe if there is no vaccine, but maybe not. So I think that's a personal decision that each school will have to make.
Exactly.
So everybody knows I'm adding these the imagery to the shared document that's on the Google Drive, or excuse me, the Google Doc. So that should be up in just a second. Brent, we had a few questions for you. I don't know that we want to bog you down, but there's, for instance, is wall-to-wall carpeting acceptable inside of the facility?
Ideally not, although it's interesting with the electrostatic sanitizers, it says it will do carpeting. Okay, so I mean it will sterilize a carpet. That what's there is not infective. And in a pure clean room facility, obviously you would not want carpeting. But again, it's lower level type approaches. I think you could definitely go to, still you wouldn't have to rip carpeting out to do it.
Okay. And what about spacing the hooks apart or the cubbies apart? Is that a necessity, specifically so the children's coats don't touch each other? Yeah,
I mean, just so they don't touch each other. I think one of the problems is hallways, width of hallways, which gets to be, yeah. Whether you go, well, lockers would be ideal. Oops, we're feedback now. It's feeding back. Oops, we got two computers here. Sorry.
No problem.
Nancy, you have to move farther away. So you have hallway widths that are mandated, and those are 6 feet or whatever, and so once you start putting lockers and things in, you potentially run into trouble with your with your other regulations there. So I was thinking hooks are probably the easiest way to just hang up coats and put shoes under them or something like that, and with a name or whatever, and then kind of space those down what area you have.
And the changeover, I imagine, is a physical barrier, door, close off, something.
It could be. It could just be a taped area. Ideally, it's probably best to have some kind of a bench so that it creates a in their minds a point where this side is outside and this side is inside. So a bench is a good thing to have.
Okay. And then there's a lot of questions about materials. UV sanitizers, what fog machine to use. Somebody ordered an e-mist electrostatic sprayers. Do you have any specific recommendations in terms of hardware?
I don't know if I presented that or not to you. I sent, I did, based on you guys talking about Victory, right? There was a Victory system, and then I think also there was a Clorox 360 system, and then there's an e-mist system that we looked at. Yeah, just one type, and so what I tried to do a cost analysis of time versus cleaning solution and everything else, and it looked like the e-mist roller cart for $4,000. Okay, now that's up from this Victory. Obviously, if you have a small school, you could do the 700. I think Matt, you were saying 700 or so was potentially the range for.
Yeah, I ordered the Victory one for its handheld. I ordered the Victory because I have to buy for 4 different locations, so spending $4,000 each school was a little bit of a reach. But yeah. I got them for $749, and I believe we're looking at about, well, they can't give me a guaranteed delivery date, but I'm hoping for 4 to 6 weeks.
Yep. And that's what they were saying from eMist also, was that it would be something like, there it is, yes.
Okay, I'll share this in chat and in the doc.
Yeah, and this one you just pull it around and it's busy misting as you go. So it's probably the fastest way you could go with it if you have a fair amount of space. Obviously, Matt, like you said, if you've got the room to do it with the backpack and other, that will work too.
Mm-hmm. Brent, do you have any recommendation? One of the things that for the Victory machine that I haven't researched yet is the type of disinfectant to use. And obviously we want it to be non-toxic, and especially in the Nido and toddler community, I'm concerned about the solution that we're using. So do you have any reference on that?
I don't, although I remember that there is quite a range in the different types. I think the Victory Fogger used actually used tablets that you put into make a concentrate, and so
Okay.
that works fine. The Clorox and the E-Mist used more like, Clorox obviously has their own. That was one reason I was worried about them, was that you get tied into into their product and the obvious potential cost there. But
Yeah.
those are something like $20 a bottle or something. But again, you get fine mist and you spread them out. I don't have a recommendation, but there certainly are a number of different ones that are. I think there's the EPA list and others of non-toxics and all. Yeah.
Okay.
But they're not toxic.
Brent, I've had some requests for your contact information, which I might caution you against if you don't want 179 emails overnight. But if you do any level of consulting, feel free. Now's your time to self-promote.
I need to start a consulting group. No.
This will work well for our school. We're doing it.
Yeah, basically we're trying to create ourselves a pilot. We're trying to think that we will try to put this together and see how it works for us. We're going to do it, but again, it would then be available to others.
And we're advertising it.
Yeah, my email is Bauerband Brent, BAUERBAND Brent. It's all one, and then it's @gmail.com.
And I'm going to ask everyone to please be respectful of Brent's time. Consolidate your requests if you don't mind. He's very gracious, but we don't want to him our brand new pen pal. If we can afford not to. Brent, I'm chatting this into your chat. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. There are more questions that I think dive into a level of nature of specificity that actually might call for our own FAQ about this topic. So what I'm going to do is compile these and then maybe ask Brent to answer them, and I'll post his answers. So before you post your questions to Brent, I'll get him to answer your questions, Brent, if you don't mind. That way we save you some time. Is that an acceptable go forward?
That'd be fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for letting me share.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Thank you for sharing. It's very, very helpful.
Okay. There's quite a few different directions to head in here. Matt, do you have any guidance for me as far as what you think the next most important?
I say you just go first come, first serve.
Okay.
And we'll keep them true and brief, meaning I want to get through all the questions. So if it's going to require a longer discussion, we can find an alternate way of discussing it, but not on this phone call.
Awesome. There was some further back. Dina asked if she was understanding you correctly when you said that parents are attending for free or make up from lost time until July.
No, for us. So we're opening up on the 26th, and parents they can choose to start week by week from May 26th until July 13th. After July 13th, if they want to keep their spot, they will have to pay tuition.
Okay. And Wally was asking how many children you have per class.
Primaries have 36. Nido has 10, and toddler community has 12.
Do you think that schools should use the clean room approach or any of those methods as marketing, an opportunity to market a differentiator? Does that feel predatory? If you're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars, I would put that front and center. I mean, I would get a press release about it. I would have the news come out about it, because again, that would be the benefit of it, is that you will appeal to a very, very pressing need. So yes, in many ways, I do think it's a differentiator. It depends on your budget. It depends on your facility. So just keep that in mind moving forward. It's going to be a personal decision for each school.
And even just doing the Victory, smaller one, any electrostatic cleaning you do, I think you can turn into a major, positive that we're taking.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. One of the things I'm concerned about too is that let's remember we are a Montessori school. And I think one of the challenges with this is that if we start marketing ourselves as the clean preschool, we could be attracting parents that maybe wouldn't be, when we get back to normal, at some point when we're talking about Montessori philosophy, maybe they won't be as amenable to it as possible. So just be aware of that. I'm really cognizant of, we are a Montessori school. We're operating the best that we can right now, but the main reason to come is not because we have this, you know, lockdown facility. It's going to be a benefit that we're having to keep you safe, but it's not the main reason. It's a hard line to walk. And I interrupted somebody, so please go ahead.
Yeah, that was Salini.
Ask a quick follow-up. You said 36 primary children now when you reopen in one class?
No. That's our capacity. So we operate with 36 in a primary classroom. That only works when you have, you know, a well-balanced classroom with third-year students.
No, I understand. But
yes.
when you reopen in the summer, how many children will you have in one group? Because there's the whole 10 people limit that's going around the country.
Sure. So in California, it's actually interesting. I just learned this today. We actually aren't capped. We have guidelines that were given to us that we don't have to follow. So we could have 36 kids in a classroom, which was eye-opening to me. We're not doing that. We're starting only with 10. And we're going to start with 10. And again, when I talked about this being a confidence game, I want to have 10 for a period of 3 or 4 weeks. And then I want to move up to 20 because, again, our classrooms are so large. We can have 2 different groups of 10 in a classroom and have just enough space and be fine. But again, we're going to really be monitoring what's going on at a local level in terms of infection before we start to increase the class sizes. It'll be a while before we get up to 36.
How do you monitor? How do you accept 10? And then how are people going to get their child into that first group of 10?
Sure. So we sent out a form stack survey, and if you use Google Forms or Form Stack or whatever to survey your parents, we sent that out last week on Friday, I believe. And so people could select the week that they want to return. We got responses back very quickly. And then we also had a spot there saying, you know, please mark here if you're an essential worker. Essential worker is defined by this. And we included a link from the state of California that defined what an essential worker is. And then in our responses that we sent out, there was an automatic reply saying we're going to be qualifying people by essential workers first. And then after that, I didn't want to lock it into how we're choosing people, but I said we will, because the reality is this could be a good time to, you know, if we had a family that's really difficult, maybe we don't want to even bring them back if they have if they are an essential worker. So it's one of those things that you always want to keep in your back pocket. So when we're putting that out there, we said we may use these factors, which could be how long the family's been at our school, right? If a family's been at our school for 2.5 years, I will absolutely choose them over a family that's been here for 3 weeks or 3 months. If they have more than one child in the school, that could be another clarifying factor. So I put out this list of, we may consider these things, but it's really going to be up to our discretion. And it's this secret algorithm that you're not going to know, but these will be the factors that we will use among others.
So can we jump to the idea of, I mean, I think Brent's floor plan and the CVC guidelines and all of those are fantastic, and I look forward to that document. But what about the cleanliness in the classroom on the shelf with the materials? Is there a system in place? Does the sanitizer do that? How do we clean the pink tower?
The sanitizer will make it a heck of a lot easier to get this done, but that's also not going to be done during the day unless you bring the children out onto the playground for an hour. I think it dries within 15 minutes, but still that would be challenging to do when children are there. I do know that in the documents that are on our website, Qasim, I believe that there are some protocols from other schools, right, that have linked what they're doing in terms of cleaning. Is that
quite a few? Yes, sir.
So I would say to review those and then really make a decision based upon what's best for your school and the comfortability of your staff and parents.
Yeah.
Can I rapid fire some questions? Real quick. Oh, Brent, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Let me just real quick comment. What my understanding is that the minimum is a wipe and a spray and wipe, okay, that you could use, any school could use on anything. The nice thing about even the smaller or the larger electrostatics is it actually wraps around. It goes everywhere. Okay, mm-hmm. So once it sprays out, you can spray it at the front here, and it'll come around to the back. I mean, it basically it hits and it sticks. Okay, yep. So that's why it's electrostatic, and so it has a job that you can't do any other way. Even with the mist foggers, which will hit more one side but not the other. The electrostatic sounds like, from everybody can see, the best.
Yeah, I agree.
Matt, I'm going to try to fly through some of these. Do you have your own cleaning crew / custodian, or do you contract out for that service?
We contract out for that service. They do come every night. Oh.
Okay. Are you prorating tuition based on the start week?
Absolutely. We're actually giving people a credit for the unused tuition in March as well. Again, my take, and this could be different for your school and your budgets, but my take was this is all an investment in goodwill to make sure that when we have not even begun to see the economic consequences of this crisis yet, right? This is coming. We're all, hopped up on stimulus money right now. When that runs out, these relationships that we have with families will be essential. And so if you can afford it, the goodwill that you have right now, I think will be translated into retention.
And since we're only accepting 10 out of the 36 students, giving your example, those 10 are paying full tuition?
Absolutely. In fact, I would love to charge them more because it's going to be more expensive to do our jobs. We're going to have more staff. We're going to have more time required for cleaning. Interesting point. We did reduce our hours by half an hour on each end so that we are disinfecting in the morning for a half hour and disinfecting in the evening for a half hour before the janitors come in the evening. And I've had zero issues with parents for that. Qasim, I should give you my P&P that I wrote to parents as well, because all this is in there, but children are not bringing lunch boxes or backpacks. Everything is, for the first month, is going to be disposable. We're buying disposable plastic forks, disposable napkins, disposable cups, no water bottles, nothing. You're basically bringing your child and a bag. We're not doing food preparation for practical life. That's temporarily suspended. We're not serving community snack. That is temporarily suspended. So I've had not a lot of pushback on that. We will have issues in the Nido with parents that bring in breast milk because you can't really bring that in a Ziploc bag. But we'll go on a case-by-case basis for what that looks like.
Laura Delgado had a question that I think we might need her to help sort of tee up, but she said, can you speak to how you're going about onboarding new families through all this at some point? Specifically, I'd like to hear what others are doing about new toddlers.
Great question. I'll speak briefly, and then I'd love other suggestions from the group. I actually see this as a huge time saver in the future, because this is forcing our staff to get used to meeting remotely with parents. I see this as going to be a boon for our admissions process, because we're going to start to do all of our tours. Oh, that's another part of our policy and procedure, is that all of our tours are going to be remote for the next 6 months. But if we can get really good at doing remote tours, that is a much faster way of going through. We don't have the no-show problem that people have. And then parents will only come into our school to observe, which will be the second part of the admissions process. Once they've been vetted, once they've met with the admissions director in an online presentation, which we can do in 20 to 30 minutes. And I would say the same thing for your assimilation meetings that you will have with new children coming into the program, that this is a great time to start doing that online. And again, there is no reason now where people wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. Everybody's been on Zoom meetings. This is separating the wheat from the chaff in terms of, the adeptness of your technological use. That was kind of a mouthful, but my point is that this is the time that you should move to that format and structure, not only for the health and safety of our community, but also just for the time and convenience of it. And what does everybody else have to say about that?
While we're waiting,
Sure,
I want to mention that Matt's going to share the remote tour procedure once it's developed, correct? We'll have a call specifically dedicated to your processes for that.
Absolutely.
Could I answer your
Go
question
ahead.
about the tours? We actually have already started doing the virtual tours. We've been doing them for 2 months. And oddly enough, in the last 2 weeks, we've probably brought in 4 new families who've never stepped foot on a campus. We have 3 schools. And fortunately, I think 2 of the 3 are coming from other Montessori schools. So that helped sell our schools. But we have managed to upload a virtual slideshow. We did this about a month and a half ago that shows the interior and the exterior of all of our campuses. We have made a couple of videos of our schools and the current teachers working with the children. So we have some online sources that they can look at when they go to our website. And we're amazed at how easy that process is and how willing the parents are to go ahead and enroll now.
That's awesome.
And we live in New Jersey, so that's a little crazy.
That's really, really encouraging. And whatever you can do to create a virtual tour is going to be great. I'm doing, because we're opening on the 26th, I'm getting all new pictures of our environments taken on the 25th and the 24th. because our schools will never look as beautiful as they will. There's been no children in our school. Our grass is the greenest it's ever going to be. The classrooms are ridiculously clean and spotless, and it looks like a Needhouse catalog. So we're going to take the pictures, and we're also using a new tool called Matterport, which is a 3D virtual tour, which is one of the ones where you can actually like walk through. It's almost like Google Streets. And it's so cool because I think that we're going to, and again, I'm developing this, but my vision for our virtual tours is that the admissions director will meet with this person, literally walk them through the environment. You can have little call out buttons that you click and it kind of shows, oh, this is a practical life area. Let me talk to you about what happens here. Let me talk to you about what our outside play area looks like and the indoor outdoor nature of our school, all that stuff. So once I have that up and going, I'd love to share that with everybody because I'm really excited about it.
And we had a
Matt,
hand up.
you've heard.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was on an NAAS call several weeks ago where the discussion of sort of a virtual tour of the classroom was discussed. And one of the admissions directors recommended against a more detailed, like move around the classroom in this way, because it showed every corner of the classroom, every egress and entry area, which they considered a safety liability. So how you present that, I think there are some safety considerations that should also be considered.
Why would this, so definitely take into account any safety issues, but is there a safety issue that exists in the school that referenced that concern?
I think they were just not wanting to show anyone from the outside that they don't know well enough yet where you can enter and exit each classroom.
I understand.
Where potential weak spots would be.
I understand. You know what, I understand that concern. That's not going to be a concern of mine. But for some schools that could honestly be an issue, especially larger schools, middle schools, high schools, that could be a very, very, very serious concern. So please do keep that in mind. And thank you for that suggestion.
Another question that came up that's from Laurel asks if we think it's going to be traumatic for 2 to 3-year-olds to be socially distanced within the school and how to address that.
I think that this whole experience has been traumatic for 2 and 3-year-olds and adults. I think it's been traumatic for everybody. And I don't think there's any way of changing that. I think we have to accept it and we have to do our best. And I think the best thing for children right now, if it's safe in your community, is to be in a Montessori environment. That's what I think.
Matt?
Yes.
So Monica here. We opened in May and with one group of 10, just to see like how to get our footing right before we open full in June. And we're seeing that the children really need a lot of big movement. So it's not really the refinement of really small things like polishing. It's more like kicking balls and throwing hoops and washing large items, that big practical life movement. We created a bike day so children can bring their bikes one day, and we've closed off the parking lot. And then they're really happy coming in for maybe an hour of like quiet individual work. But the emotions are really big. And but we're really finding that bigger practical life is helping quite a lot.
Great recommendation.
Tire washing.
Tire washing, yeah. We have some of the younger children are actually like painting brick walls with water.
That's right. I'm really good at that.
Yeah, me too. But they are enjoying it.
We started our Nido program. Some of the Nido children came back with essential workers, and they've been surprisingly fine. I think they miss school. We didn't see a lot of separation anxiety, maybe because they missed school. They adapted okay to the assigned tables. They now have assigned tables in different places. Some of them actually really like it. So either like they're just really glad to be back at school, or perhaps even, the trauma you mentioned, maybe that's already happened because they're comfortable seeing us in masks. They get that you need to stay away from people. I mean, it's been 2.5 months of their parents telling them this at home and them absorbing this. So it's not the first time that they're experiencing social distancing. It's, sometimes a kid will literally lie on another child and we have to say, oh, give them space.
Right.
But overall, like it hasn't been traumatic. I think the children have actually been really happy to be back at school.
It's great
Nice.
news.
Matt, I have something about Matterport cameras.
Yes, sir.
I know someone who's very familiar with them and has done a lot of work with them. And he recently discovered that there are other apps out there now where you can you can save yourself a lot of money in not buying a Matterport camera and utilizing the other apps. If he were here right now, I'd ask him what they were, but I can forward along that information. So somebody with an iPhone could take pictures and then feed the photographs into that app, and it will look much like a Matterport production.
Yeah, so Matterport actually they just released an iPhone app. So it's all done in an iPhone, because I'm not going to spend thousands of dollars on a camera for a one-time use. But I do want this really bang up virtual tour, at least for our admissions process this year. So absolutely. And again, it's Matterport. If you guys want to check it out, Matterport. And it's used a lot for real estate, virtual tours. But again, one of the primary selling points of our schools are our environments. We cannot be matched in terms of how our environments, what our environments do for children. And I think that is worth it in terms of the time and minimal expense, because I think it's like maybe $50 a month for Matterport or something along the lines of that. You can embed that in your Google Maps as well. So it's like when people go to Google Maps, they can look inside your school. And again, keep in mind the security concerns that came up about access points and stuff like that. But if you're amenable to it, I do think that's a big selling point for your social media profiles and your website.
Matt, I've got a survey to share. This is the anonymous survey that everybody took. We have 111 responses, and I'll go ahead and share my screen here, and I'll try to publish these as well. So the very first question we asked is, are you planning on reopening this coming year? And 72% of respondents said yes.
Okay.
You'll notice that some are undecided, and then we have some partial reopenings. What are your plans for tuition assistance for the coming school year? And this appeared to be split. 36% of our respondents said that they haven't decided. 27% will be offering tuition assistance. 20% will be offering additional tuition assistance. 27% will not, 20% will. And then 13% will be discounting tuition for some families, while 5% will be discounting our tuition for all families. Have you had to refund tuition during these first months of closure? 46% said yes, 38% said no, and we do not plan to. 7% said no, but we plan to, and 9% can't. Have you had to lay off any staff members? 42% have, 50% have not, and 7% no, but we plan to. And what percentage of your students do you believe will return? 12% are in the 90 to 100 range, 50% are in the 70 to 90% range, 30% are in the 50 to 70, and then 10% are in the less than 50%. I'll publish these on our town hall page as well. And I want to thank Christiana so much for the idea. This was really valuable, and she's the one that came to me and said, hey, we should do this. So if you have other ideas like this, please let me know. If you have other ideas for content that we can or should create, please let me know. And if you have other ideas for thought leaders that we should invite to these calls, please let me know. We'll make sure that all that happens.
A couple more questions came through, Qasim.
Yeah, can you please share, oops, sorry. This is difficult to manage. I'm not good at it. Forgive me, everyone. Share the name of the app you use to take videos of your school. Oh, that's the Matterport, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay, I posted that in the chat as well, so everybody has it.
It's Matterport, Matterport.com.
And Sharon
Can I
mentioned,
just ask a question real quickly?
Sure.
So you're starting out with 10 children per classroom, but your state is not limiting you ultimately. You'll be gradually moving back to your full capacity in each space. Is that correct?
That's the plan. Yeah, that's the plan. I mean, I say that with a laugh because it's like every time I make a plan, I'm changing it a week later. So yes, I would like to do that. We're going to start with 10 in each classroom and see where it goes. A lot of this is, just getting some staff to come back was a challenge. And so it's like, even if parents and even if the even if the guidelines we could have full classrooms right now, I still don't think all of our staff feel comfortable. And it's essential that our same staff comes back, because those relationships are really one of the biggest value propositions that we have for people to return. So I need them to come back. So we're going to limit it at the beginning. And then hopefully we can ramp it up. And if things stay stable in terms of infection rates, which is the key caveat, maybe we can be back at something that looks like normalcy in the fall.
And I'm assuming other states have more defined, like I know I'm hearing in our state, Colorado, that it might just be 10 per classroom across the board, no matter what.
You know, logically, when I think about that, if people are going back to work, they have to have something external from their home for their child, regardless of age. I don't see logically how that would work if every single preschool could only have 10 children in a classroom, nor would I think that people would choose to operate for a long term like that, because how can you make a budget with 10 children in a classroom? So I think that there are natural limitations to that. And again, I think all of this is just so fungible right now that we're just reacting to what we have in front of us, and nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. But if people go back to work, I don't see that being an option, but I could be wrong. I've run wrong many times.
Matt, may I ask you, if you're having the limited number of children and the staff isn't all coming back, how do you handle those relationships that you've built with established children and staff? Is this going to be a fluid situation, which room you're in or which teacher you're in with?
That's a great question. I mean, I was looking at this earlier today because we had children that were scheduled to transition from Nido to toddler community and toddler community to primary during the closure. And what do we do when they come back? You know, technically they're aged out of their classroom for our state licensing standards, but am I really going to take a child that's now 19 months who's only been in our Nido and that's all that she knows, and then in the middle of a time when everybody is already highly anxious, move her to a new environment? I'm not willing to do that. She can maybe move in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, but I'm willing to take the risk of doing what's best. And if somebody wants to come arrest me for that, they can. I don't think they will, right?
No.
But that would be my point. Is that, well, I don't think I made a point. Your question was, what are we doing with our staff?
Yeah, so how does your group work? So you start with this group of 10, and as you expand, are they all in one classroom? Are you going to open up the different classrooms in anticipation of that classroom holding your maximum that you feel comfortable with? I
understand. So all of our classrooms are opening. So all of our guides are coming back. And so we'll have 10 children in each classroom with each guide, because the guides, not that assistants aren't valuable, but I'm going to be frank, our guides are more valuable because I can't replace them. And so from there, we will be basing our assistance on what our enrollment is. And at the beginning, and that's why it was so helpful for us to have this survey to parents about when they want to come back, because we can know, hey, you know, we may only have 10 children when we open, but 3 weeks from now we'll have 17 children. Well, of course, I'm going to keep that assistant on, because you know, it's worth it to pay the extra payroll right now to make sure that we're prepared when they come back. We don't have to hire and train a new person. So it's really key that you have that scheduling with your admissions of existing parents pretty locked down, so you can then make good decisions with your staff.
Matt, my name is,
go ahead. I'm
sorry. My name is Sherry Bishop. I'm in Virginia, and we've been talking a lot about policy in terms of the physical environment of the school, the safety procedures, the logistics, but not really much about how we're going to handle children's emotional, how fragile they're going to be when they come back. This is trauma. This is like any other trauma. And it said that children who have gone through something for more than 6 weeks that is a major change in their lives, they have the potential to have PTSD. And it's the same way for the teachers. And we are a school that addresses the whole child. So I would hope that we can be thinking about and also have a webinar of this type to address trauma and the trauma-informed training that teachers will need to get to support children through this. Children are going to be anxious. My children worry about me going out. I have a 15-year-old. He worries about me going out of the house. He worries about who I'm coming in contact if I wore my mask. You know, they know that people are dying. And so I would hope, and then social interaction and collaboration is significant. It's a significant premise that happens in the Montessori classroom. And when you distance children who have experienced that before, that's another major change. And so I hope our investment is not just in the strategy and the physical re-entering of the environment, but also the emotional and psychological re-entering for the children and the staff.
I think it's a great suggestion, and I'd love to have somebody on to talk about it. It's not something that I'm qualified to discuss. I'd love some suggestions from anybody in the group, or we can also seek somebody out from the Montessori community or not from the Montessori community to talk about, because that is a reality, right? I think everything that you said is true, and you're right. We can focus a lot as administrators on just the logistics of the physical things in our environment, but as we all know, I mean, the one wild card that happens every day at our school is what happens with children, and the more we are tuned into their well-being right now, I think the easier it's going to be. So
yeah, I think this is going to be considered a adverse childhood experience. If you're aware of the 10 adverse childhood experiences, I think this is going to go down in history as another one.
Emily has a recommendation for somebody. Emily, if you know this person, would you mind connecting them with me and just making a warm introduction? And I'll see if she can hop on a call with us next week.
I surely will. I've texted her just now.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Great.
4 minutes to go, and we've got a lot of chat. I don't know how to mitigate this, Matt. I'm so sorry.
I do have something related to what Sherry is saying, but it's more on the just like development side. So the children have been really happy to be back at school, but we have noticed different impacts on children. Some have literally propelled forward. Their parent, you could see the investment their parents have made, how they've cut off from work, been with their child, and some have absolutely regressed or moved backwards in many ways. So it's really important, you know, in addition to all the trauma that over time, it'll be great to learn how to deal with that, but just to meet the children where they are developmentally, because some went forward, some went backwards, some are like, same old, you know, good to see you again. But it's just, very different experiences that have happened at home, and it leaves footprints all over the children. You can see it. So it'll be good for the teachers and the guides to keep that in mind when they welcome the children back.
Absolutely. Setting expectations with your guides about that, I think, is really essential. Not that they wouldn't do that, but reminding them that it's going to be okay, right? For the first month, when these things come up, that it's normal, that it's just part of what we're going to have to deal with, and preparing them for that.
I'm going to try to get a thought leader, an expert, Colleen, on the call next week on Thursday. I'll keep everybody informed via email. The recording will go out. I'm going to have Brent answer all the FAQs and post those as well. So when you go to the Nido Marketing website, you'll notice that there's a page specifically for Town Hall. The recordings are posted directly under the recordings, or all of the assets and bullet points. If there's any asset that you want to share with me, I'll make sure that it makes its way to the video. Other than that, and Heather's had her hand up for a minute, and I keep ignoring her. I'm so sorry, Heather. Do you want to take the last 2 minutes?
Sure. I just kind of wanted to go back to the trauma-informed care. In the state of Florida, we have an actual part of our DCF training. There's trauma-informed care training that's available. I don't know if anybody other states have that for childcare, but it is a course that you take just through your regular childcare training class that we'll be putting all of our teachers through as well. The good thing is children are so resilient, and I mean, that's what we know about their well-being. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If you live in a different state, maybe you can even sign on to the DCF Florida website and have the trauma-informed care site. I think it's like a 10-hour training.
Also, I'd like to put out, I was teaching during 9/11, and the children really didn't show, the children's reactions showed for years later through their artwork and their conversations. Some children don't have the language to express, and it does come out. So this is something you're going to see down the road for years.
Awesome. We'll make sure to have a thought leader on next week, next Thursday. I really appreciate that recommendation, Sherry, too. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
I have a quick question for Matt, Wally.
Hey, Wally.
Matt, any update on the kiosk?
Yeah, the kiosks. So I did get a delivery date. Unfortunately, it's 5 weeks out from me. I was able to order them through the manufacturer, through Meridian. And again, for those that don't know, this is it's a screen. It's a temperature kiosk that we're going to have at our front desk with a thermal camera. So rather than having to do the thermometer with all of our children, and especially when elementary return, which I think would just be insane to think about the time that would take. You know, a child or adult comes up to the screen. There's a facial recognition feature which recognizes who it is, takes their temperature. There's an alarm that goes off if it's over a certain amount, and then it logs it every day for that child. Or that staff member. So those are they were a little bit pricey. I will say that it was about $2,400 with tax and shipping. But I think that again, when you're looking at differentiation and selling points, I think that could be something that for staff and for parents, that they feel that we're taking this seriously and that we value their health and that this is a safe place to be. So as soon as I have those in my possession, I would love to do a video walkthrough, I guess, and show you how it works.
And folks, we're a minute past time. I'm going to post this recording. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Really grateful to you and for you. Matt, I don't think you're going to make it next week, correct?
I will not be here next week. Again, we're reopening on that following Monday, and I got things going on, so I won't be on the call next week.
Awesome. But we'll try to have the trauma enforcement.
Good luck.
Charlie, I saw your comment. I believe the one that I ordered has a temperature sensitivity to 0.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And I think what we'll do is we'll just have a follow-up, like that's going to be just a vetting cue at the beginning. And then if there's somebody's over that limit, we'll follow up with a different thermometer just to make sure that we have something that is actually a temperature.
Yes.
Okay. All right, guys. Awesome. Nice seeing everybody. Hope
Well,
you're well.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
it was
bye-bye.
very informative. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.